I'm joined today by best-selling author, speaker, sales educator, and communications guru. I think we could actually call him Chip Helm. So welcome to the show, Chip.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, I mean, we connected on LinkedIn literally a couple of weeks ago when we found that we had a shared passion for personal branding and communication. And, I come at this from a sort of marketing communications angle. You come at this from a sales sort of coaching and sales performance angle. But we're meeting in this kind of really nice sort of sweet spot in the middle, which is all about people and their personal brand. So it's certainly something I want to kind of explore with you in this conversation, but just to help people sort of get a little bit of context about you. Can you just give a little bit of a profile about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've basically been in the medical industry for about 35 years plus. That's not what I wanted to do when I grew up. When I wanted to grow up a long time ago, I wanted to be an orthodontist, like my father. That's putting braces on people's teeth. I went to dental school. Ended up not being able to become a dentist. It was very hurtful. Didn't know what to do with my life. I had some issues with my hand-eye coordination. I'm not good with my small motor skills. So I had to change directions overnight within 24 hours. I remember sitting down with my father, who's a dentist, an orthodontist, and we both cried. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with my life. And someone said, "Why don't you get into sales?" I said, "Sales? What the heck is sales?" And that was 5 years ago. I didn't go to school to become a salesperson. So because of mentoring and the mentors that I have, they showed me a way and a guidance. I ended up going to work for a medical company for the last 35 years. Multi-billion-dollar company. I've been fortunate to have a lot of different positions in the company. And I just grew and grew and grew. And I just always felt like I had some knowledge, some experience to share with people. So, years ago, my kids, I have 3 kids. One's an orthopedic resident starting in July. One's just finishing up vet school in May. And the other one's going to dental school. And they just kept saying, "Dad, why don't you write this book that you keep telling me I'm going to write?" So they bugged me and they bugged me and they bugged me. And I'll be honest with you, I just want to get them off my butt or off my, excuse my term, my ass. So finally I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And so really my thoughts came in these books I wrote, in the last couple of years, all about the premise of sales. And, one of the chapters that we're going to discuss today, or one of the things we want to discuss is branding. And I really have a passion because I didn't know what that was. I wish somebody would have told me what that was years ago, because when you think of branding, all you think about is, the company, the corporate brand. So that's kind of gives you a quick thing of where I was and where I am. And, my passion is coaching and mentoring and teaching. And even though I still have a day gig, and that's the one thing I want to repeat a lot, is I've always felt strong about sharing and discussing and talking to someone like you, is because I'm still in the heat of the moment. I'm still doing it every day. So whatever I say and do is what I've done and said for years. And so I would never ask anybody to do something that I haven't done. So that's what's nice, because I can actually share things that I'm still doing it every single day. So
it is that passion, isn't it? Is once you find that, I guess the word is vocation, that kind of beautiful balance between what you're good at, but actually what you really enjoy and you feel passionate about. There is that moment where you just think, yeah, this is what I was born into. This is why I'm here doing what I do. And it's interesting. One of the things I want to sort of start with before we kind of get into that personal branding idea and concept is, I know that you're a big believer that we're all in sales, and some people say I'm a salesperson and they have that job title and they do sales. They know that that's what they are. But I think you're quite clear that everybody, no matter what career, whatever passion they have, whatever industry they're in, we're all in sales.
I hope you understand that I don't speak unless I have the passion. And I'm telling you, it drives me crazy that people who are in IT, who are in marketing, who are an entrepreneur of their business, or my son who's going to be an orthopedic surgeon. We are all in sales, and people go, what do you mean we're all in sales? First of all, the myth out there is we are all in sales. Secondly, is unless you have the word sales in your title, people don't think you're in sales. But that is completely wrong direction people should go. We are selling every day. We're selling ourselves every day. We're selling a widget every day, or we're selling a concept every day. Heck, I'm trying to convince my wife sometimes to do things. That's sales. We are constantly communicating with people. I talk about consistent communication, constant communication, correct communication, and we are constantly evolving into selling something, every day, every minute, every day. And this thing that people believe that they're in IT or they're in marketing, and I get this all the time. Hey, Mr. Helm, I'm in marketing, but you're in sales because you got to sell this concept, correct? Oh yeah, but I'm really not in sales. Yes, you are in sales. And that's how the real world works. Every business, everything we do has an endpoint. If we don't sell something, we're probably not going to be very productive. We're probably not going to make, I guess you want to be financially successful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the thing that we've got to get people to understand, that we are in this business of sales. It's just a dirty word to a lot of people. They think sales is not connected to humility. I think I'm the only guy that's ever put the word sales and humility in a title of a book. Because people think of the used car salesperson when they think of sales, and that's completely false. And once you get understanding that that's a myth of it out there, then you're going to be very successful in life, because then you're going to use the principles that I use every day for my personal life as well as my professional life.
So do you think it is this kind of old school kind of philosophy that sales is about the cold calling, it's about the pressured one-way communication where I've got this monologue, I want to sell you my features and benefits of my product or service, and you will want to buy, and it's all about my terms, it's all about my message. Where do people kind of begin to kind of break down that? Because that's a huge hurdle for a lot of people to get over, isn't it?
Well, first of all, I think it all started with this commission structure. Years ago, companies would offer commission. So that's a fine line. You can cross that line. Are you really helping someone and you're really solving a problem? Or are you just selling something to sell something so that you can get the old nickel and dime and whatever you want? Do you really care once you sell it? And I think it goes back to what you just said earlier when you started. It's about people. It's about caring for people. It's about being genuine. Do you care about that person? Do you care what you're trying to do to help them? And that's where the difference between great salespeople and mediocre salespeople are. I think the great ones, they do care. They do care after they sell. They continue those relationships. I've always said it's all about relationships. It's all about networking. It's all about the people that you come in contact, and how can you impact the world, and how can you impact those people, and how can you make a difference?
So one of the things that we're seeing as a bit of a trend, I guess you could say, in marketing circles is this whole idea of talking about the customer outcome. So in other words, how is their world going to be different as a result of that relationship that you've just talked about there? Do you see that being a key element in this kind of new paradigm for selling?
Well, I call it, it's kind of like I coined the term chipism. Obviously, my name is Chip. And when I say a chipism, I mean it's a behavior change. It's something I want you to remember, something I want you to live day by day. Well, we go back to that customer. Remember something about a customer. The customer doesn't have to figure you out. We have to figure that customer out. Again, the customer doesn't have to figure us out, but we have to figure that customer out. And it goes back to, I always say, never close the door on a customer. I always say, one time it took me 7 years to gain a customer. I always say that, hey, if I only can get 15 seconds in front of you, 30 seconds in front of you, I know I can see you again. I know that you'll keep the door open for me. So if you look at it like putting the customer needs first and your needs second, you'll always win. I mean, that's what they call servant leadership. You got to worry more about the other person and more about what they need. But that's the problem of this whole circle of life of sales, is because I'm not sure people look at it that way. I've always believed if you took care of the customer, you will win. It may take a while. You may not make the money you want initially, but if you put money number one, it'll drain you. If you put other people first and what you try to do and what you try to impact, then the money will come. I kind of look at it reverse than most people. I don't look at a position that how financially successful I could be. I look at it as how successful I can be with people. And if I'm successful with people, that will lead to financial success.
I want to build on that whole thing about empathy in a minute when we start talking a little bit about the personal brand
Right.
concept. But I just want to pick your brains a little bit here about, I think one of the big challenges, if we take on this idea that selling is an inherent part of all of us, and particularly in professional, but also personal life, as you describe it there. One of the things that comes with the way that you've described that is patience, is that, sometimes with certain customers and certain industries, patience is a real virtue and you will win in the long term. How do people balance that, though, with the pressures of, the chaos of the pandemic, sales managers kind of giving you pressure on, you've got to hit your targets? How do you balance that kind of patience with the commercial reality of living today?
Well, you've got to also enhance your toolbox. And when I say enhance your toolbox is, let's take the example of the pandemic. How good are you at virtual selling? What are you using now in your toolbox to help you through the virtual component? Because obviously, to be honest with you, I'm in the medical industry / pharma industry, and all the COVID-19 did was speed things up. Meaning it was inevitable that you're going to see less salespeople in hospitals and areas. It was going to happen. It's just happening faster. So what's that mean? That means that we'll still go back to have some face-to-face. Maybe it's 80-20. Maybe it's 70-30 instead of 90-10. But what I mean by that toolbox is, are you honing your phone skills? People in the generation today and other generations do not know how to use the phone appropriately. They don't know how to create the proper emails and text messages. They don't know how to, Zoom call and really sell. I don't do anything differently on a Zoom than I would do if I was talking to you right across from you, having a cup of coffee. I still use my hands. I still notice my tone of my voice will change. I still am trying to engage you. I'm still trying to build a relationship with you. So I think it's honing those skills to be part of your toolbox. So I think that will minimize, as you say, the pressures. I mean, is it still accountability? Is it still accountability? Yes. Do you still need to get up every day and, put together, I call it a to-do list. I've always said, start your every morning with a to-do list. And usually if you put your top 10 things down on this list, it will increase to 15 things that day. But you've got to have a plan. Plan your work your plan. Plan your work your plan. So by the way, if you hear me repeat things throughout the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, how long we talk, is because the two most important things that you can do for career success is repetition, 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 and preparation, 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 because you've got to teach yourself over and over again to do the same things over and over and over again so that you can just do it in your sleep. You can just do it in your sleep without thinking about it. You're successful when you can do things in your sleep without thinking about it. It just comes naturally.
That's a great mantra, I think, for everybody trying to get onto this journey. You might have somebody who's quite junior looking to forge a career in communication, sales, marketing, whatever it happens to be, but also people who have been in the industry that they're in maybe for a couple of decades or more. And I think what they're needing to do is, as you say, that kind of upskilling, staying current, staying relevant with the technology, but also maintaining those really good habits. And I think for me, that's a sort of a life journey, really, and quite a passion is making sure that, I'm not perfect, and I don't think we're asking other people to be perfect, but just having that good intention of good habits and maintaining that as part of this real kind of focus, if you like, on trying to be the best person you can be. And I think that's kind of what you're preaching here.
I agree with you. It all goes back to I always say with the right heart and the right intent. The right heart, the right intent, you're going to win. It may not get to where you want to go. It doesn't mean you're going to be president or CEO of a company. It doesn't mean you're going to actually get to exactly where you're going to end up where you want to in life, but with the right intention, the right intent, the right heart, you're going to do the right thing. And so in the long term, you will end up in the right way.
This is really, really interesting. And it kind of feels like everybody is almost being reminded by this, that they're on some kind of journey. It is a personal journey. It's a personal journey of kind of, as you say, some of the soft skills. There's obviously the technical skills. There's the kind of tech evolution that they're going to be going through as well. And it's this lovely mix that they need to be very sort of self-aware and sort of very conscious that there is a whole plethora of things, all these ingredients going into this kind of soup, if you like, that becomes them in the future. So one of the things obviously that we were keen to kind of discuss, in this conversation was this whole idea of taking that together holistically into something that we might call a personal brand. Now, I know you've been thinking about this and educating on this for some time now. Kind of where would somebody start, in your view, if they were starting to really kind of understand kind of where their personal brand is today, even before they start to develop it?
Well, that's a great question, because you use the word self-awareness, and let's talk further about that as we go down this storyline of a personal brand, how to develop it and what it is. But I think the first thing that you got to do is you got to be aware of it. I never knew that a personal brand was important. So first of all, you have to be as simple as that. You realize that a personal brand is very important. And you're going to ask me, why is that important? It's important because usually if you work for somebody, let's say, take for example, myself in a corporation, they control your purse strings. They control your promotion. They control so much of your life that a personal brand is very, very necessary. Let's just say, pick out the corporate world. So it's very simple how to begin. First of all, I wish I would have acknowledged it and understood that what it even is, because a lot of people, as I said earlier, believe they only think of a brand, they think of a corporate brand, a company brand. You never think about your own brand. So you got to start simple and say, okay, there is what's called a personal brand. It is important. This is why it's important. The second thing, the most simplest technique, our trick of the trade to begin this journey, is simply get with a best friend. Get with your mother and father, get with a mentor, get with someone that you trust, go out to lunch, sit across from each other, pull out a piece of paper. You have a piece of paper, your friend has a piece of paper, and all you say is, do me a favor. I'm starting to think about my personal brand. Would you write down the top 5 things you know about me? Something that, I don't care if it's good, bad, or indifferent. And you'd be amazed, and you write what you think of yourself. And you'd be amazed how often those are different. That, wow, I didn't realize that I could get kind of pissy sometimes. I don't realize that I don't listen very well. Or I don't realize that, wow, I didn't realize that, what I did. And I think that that's where the first comes, is to understand and acknowledge, because your best friend or your mentor or your mother and father really knows it best. And there's no bias. And that's how you start your brand. You figure out what it is, because we love ourselves. Well, you love yourself, don't you?
Yes.
Love yourself, right? I love myself. The problem is we sometimes don't realize what is the true Chip or the true Neil, but other people can share that with you. And that's how you begin your brand. Just having that conversation, start that. And then the next step is you actually write out your story, your brand, maybe a paragraph. And that's how you begin to write your personal brand, develop your personal brand, and begin to utilize your personal brand.
So one of the things that I've been playing around with for quite some time is something I call the rule of thirds, which is a concept that I developed for basically digital marketing and social media, which is a neat kind of balance that just seems to work for people consuming information about, as you say, the corporate style brands or a business. So 1/3 is personal, getting to know you. 1/3 what I call free stuff, which is sharing third-party content the other person might find interesting, and 1/3 is the overt sale. So personal, point, and promote. So tying those three things together, personal, point, and promote, is if we were to put those three things together and almost use those as a little bit of a checklist, if you like, for the other person, it would be very interesting to see if we were asking somebody else, okay, tell me those top 5 things, which of those 3 categories most people would give you feedback in. Because some people like to talk about themselves. They do, it's just the nature of them. Some people are constantly and consistently selling stuff, and other people just share other people's stuff and don't actually provide or feel that they have any personal worth and things worth sharing. Of course, the optimum balance is when you're actually balancing all 3 things. It's a little about you, it's a little useful stuff from elsewhere, and a little bit of, high value information that you would like them to engage with. It's interesting, isn't it, when you actually sort of think about the differences between what you're trying to put out and what people are receiving. Do you see any patterns in those differences?
Well, first of all, I've never really broken it down exactly like you just broke it down. I looked at it a little differently. I looked at it as a own personal brand that, obviously is controlled, let's just put it honestly, by your boss. Let's say if you're working for somebody and you're not an entrepreneur, not fortunate enough to work for yourself, and most people in this country work for somebody else, you will pretty much have that control. They have that control over you. And so when you want promotions, or you want more financial money, or you want something to be done, you really have to hone in. And maybe that's what you're talking about too, is breaking down your personal brand into levels. What do you mean by your personal brand? Like you said, right, is the way you work, or the way you act, or the way you feel, or whatever. What I try to do also is compare a personal brand to the corporate brand, and then to the I look at a customer brand in the sense of the word. So, because in my opinion, there's in a Super Bowl, there's those 3. There's you as a personal brand, which, to be honest with you, if it was between you and I, that to me is not the most important brand to have. I personally believe if you're respected and loved by your customers, that's the most important brand you could have. The second most important brand you could have is your peers in the industry that you work in and what you do. Because to me, those are the 2 top level brands to have. And if the customers like you and your peers like you, you're doing all the right things. But unfortunately, in the real world, the personal brand that you're talking about and how you break that down is probably the most important brand, because of the impact it has on your career and where you go and where you end up. But, me personally, there's no better brand than what I carry on my tombstone or whatever, that if my peers thought the world of Chip Helm and the customers that I serve think the world of Chip Helm, that to me all that matters. But that's the way I went. That's why I didn't understand what you're talking about. I didn't understand what the personal brand was. I wasn't self-aware. I'm huge now in self-awareness. You said something earlier about you're still learning in your journey. I'm still learning how to become better self-aware, because it's as simple as, do you observe? Do you listen? Or do you talk less? And do you watch your surroundings? Because the CFO could be down 2 seats down at a bar, and you better be careful what you say. Things could be taken out of context. It's as simple as that. And I try to teach people all the time, be more aware than me, because maybe my life would have gone a different direction if I was better at self-awareness. But I probably didn't understand self-awareness because I thought everyone liked me.
It's interesting.
It's easy to get to know. For the most people like me. I can walk into a crowd and I can just energize and become your friend. But I wasn't watching around me who was around me, who could impact me. Because there are jealous people out there. There are people who are intimidated. There are bosses and people that don't want you to get promoted. They don't want you to get better than them. It is what it is. Sorry. And that's why I tie in rules of engagement. That's another conversation what you have now with your personal brand, because I've been knocked off that brand 2 or 3 times. It takes a heck of a long time to build up a brand, but it only takes seconds to lose it. And I've lost it quite a few times.
That in itself really identifies for me one of these big challenges of maintaining this. Yeah, because I think you've identified something there which I'm sure resonates with loads of people listening to this, is this kind of alignment between the inner world and the outer world. In other words, you can you get the pieces of paper like you described, and you can sit there with your buddy or your mentor, and you can create this perfect list in your little ivory tower, and you think, I've got it, I've nailed it, this is now my personal brand, here I go out into the world with it. But the world's got a different view, and the world comes back to you and hits you right between the eyes and says, no, that's not how we see you, or that's not how we want to see you, or no, you're not capable of doing that, and keeps repeatedly hitting you back and knocking you back. So is what we're looking at here then a real kind of alignment with what you would be comfortable with on the outbound version, and actually what the world wants to see and sort of almost values from you? It's quite a hard thing to match and align those two things, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I believe that you go back to the beginning of what I said, and you find somebody who you trust, who will tell you the truth. So that will line up more than what is out there in the real world. Meaning, don't go to someone that tells you what you want to hear. Tell someone that really cares about you and will give you the honest truth about you. The more truth you can get from somebody, good or bad. I'd rather hear the bad more than the good. I know what I'm good at. I don't know what I'm bad at. That's what you want. Hopefully, if you do that correctly, then it will align more up in the future. I didn't do that. I didn't start that way. I don't think I started a personal brand until I was 6-7 years into the position, into the job. And that was only after I lost it, or I was aware finally that I lost it, or that I had said something that was taken out of context, or, or something like that. So I think that really has a lot to do with how you pull your personal brand together. But I mean, it's a very, it's a very tough thing, because, it's very hurtful out there. There are people out there who will and do and throw you under the bus. There's no question about it. You've got to understand that can happen. It will happen. It's just a matter of time, where, who, why. I read this thing about, enemies. I don't know, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt, but he basically said something like, it's actually, you've done a lot of good things in life when you have a lot of enemies. And I had to think about that for a while. It's true, because if you have a lot of enemies, that means you stood up for yourself, or that means you said what you wanted to say. You were yourself. You didn't care what other people thought. Well, you do in the real world. You care what other people think. I mean, because that's just the way the real world works. And if you don't aware of that, I mean, I wish right now your conversation with me, I wish it was played back to me 30 plus years ago. Maybe I would have learned a lot faster. Maybe I wouldn't have made as many mistakes. It doesn't matter. You can't go back. I don't regret anything. Maybe I would have done a little differently. But the bottom line is, it is what it is. And you just have to learn. I think what's the problem, what we're talking, it's none of this what we're talking about, Neil, is rocket science. This isn't something that, the authors of 20 years ago didn't say. I'm just saying it differently, hopefully. Or maybe the way I'm saying it can have an impact, but we're not talking about rocket science here. There's nothing different today than was discussed 20 years ago and will be discussed 20 years from today. It's just the fact of, you used the word reminder, and maybe it's just reminders, that you're trying to have. It's not that you don't know. It's just that you don't know. You haven't exercised it. You haven't executed it. You haven't put it to use.
And it's interesting when you kind of describe it like that, this feels like the journey is more important than the destination. And I think both of us, we've been in business quite a few decades now, we kind of know a little bit of stuff, and we also know and recognize we don't know everything, which I think is the key to wisdom, isn't it? Knowing you don't know everything. But I think to me then, again, going back to the analogy of the corporate brand where, you know, after a certain period of time, it is completely acceptable. And in fact, it's actually encouraged to go through a rebranding exercise. So you refresh it, you bring it up to date. Do you see the personal brand taking on, if we say that this is a journey, it's an ongoing process for all of us, do you see the personal branding or personal rebranding as being an essential part of that journey?
Yeah, because I don't think you can ever create your personal brand and live by it and in life create the rest of your career and life. You're going to go through your ups and downs. You're going to go up the ladder and then you're going to drop and lose your brand. You're going to recreate your brand and then you're going to go up again and lose it again. You're going to have different levels in your life and career steps in your life that are going to cause you to reevaluate, to rebrand, to rethink about it. I think the biggest thing is just the fact that you acknowledge it, that you know it's there in front of you, that you're not defensive when someone says, hey, you're still not listening, or wow, you can be very critical more than you should be with people, or, you know, or whatever it is. I think we're too defensive as human beings. And just the fact to tell me, be very honest to me so that I can start to learn how to, I call it rules of engagement. Meaning once you understand that, then sit down across from your boss or from your colleague or whatever and say, okay, what are the next steps? How can I improve on this? You know, it goes back to this. And I think this is a really critical thing you have to accept. Even if you didn't do something wrong, okay? But if you're in the real world and somebody else thinks you did it, and you know, and some of your friends know you didn't do it, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You just have to acknowledge it that they think you did it. So basically you did it. Now what happens? You acknowledge it, you get up off the ground, you wipe it off and say, you know what? I know I didn't do it. The good Lord knows I didn't do it, but that doesn't matter. Now, how am I going to have a better engagement with this person moving forward, especially when I got to work with this person, let's say for the next few years? That's where you just have to move on, compartmentalize it, you know, in a sense of, okay, I did it. Now let's move on. Now, how do I work better with you? How do I communicate better with you? What's your expectations for me now moving forward? How often do you want to communicate? What's your deadlines? And you just want to go through a series of 4 or 5 questions to uncover how to work better. But that's the key. Most people don't let it go. Most people, I didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. But that's not the point in the real world. Perception is reality in the real world. Perception is reality. It's just the way it is.
So would you say then, again, building on that as a key point, would you say that if somebody is listening to this and thinking, do you know, it's really time I sat across from a new mentor and we really talked openly, authentically, transparently about what is actually going on here? What kind of level of detail are we talking about? Are we talking about the little nuances of body language, facial expression, you know, those little granular levels of detail? Or are we talking about the big picture stuff, you know, the kind of, okay, the clothes that I wear, the tone of voice that I have, you know, the bigger stuff? Or are we talking about the fine little details?
That's a great question. I think it just depends. I think it depends on the person. I mean, let's say that you talk all the time and that's a great quality, by the way. People have got to understand something, that doing what you do is not a bad thing. It's just, you got to do it, as I always say, in moderations. But it's like saying, okay, you're just not a good listener. Okay, so that's a broad, large area. Okay. Or it could be as simple as, the way you do dress in your professional setting. Hey, I just want to comment. I remember 30 years ago, young ladies, just be careful how you dress because the shorter dresses don't look as professional. So yeah, I'm not going to say that there aren't individual small details that your best friend or someone who you care about sees and can help you, because obviously, you want to be professional, right? You want to do things you're supposed to do. So I would say it just depends on the situation, whether that's a granular comment that you could work on. that you just didn't know any better. I want to know. Or if it's a larger thing, because, listening skills are not something you just do overnight. And all of a sudden you're a good listener. Self-awareness doesn't happen overnight, or, those kind of things like that. It's something that you have to recognize and work on, and then it will evolve, over time. But again, it goes back to, do you want to do it? Do you have the right intent and the right heart? I really believe it's like doing the right thing. And, it's kind of like, I got 3 kids, use that as an analogy. How can I go to my kids and try to raise them if I didn't believe I was doing the right things at work, and I was taking care of customers and my employees, and if I treated something poorly, I always like this quote from a good friend of mine that said this. He owned his own car dealership. He said, I always want to treat my employees like I want my employees to treat our customers. I want to make sure we treat our employees, or we treat our employees like we want our employees to treat our customers. And how true is that? Because the more you surround yourself with good people and you take care of people, they'll take care of you. And, you shouldn't treat your employees any differently than you treat your customers. But unfortunately, we do. This is the real world. I go back to the real world because I think that people don't understand until you get out there and do it. Sorry, you're not going to see it in a textbook. You're not going to see it written. You've got to experience and understand it. And I don't mean to be a downer, Debbie Downer, or Nancy Negative. I love those terms. When I say that, you're going to come across people who want to throw you under the bus. You will come across people who don't want you to succeed. You have got to understand that, acknowledge it, be aware of it. It's going to happen. It's just, how are you going to react? Are you going to be proactive or reactive when it happens?
And I think that's a nice, really nice example of the kind of the life reality of being a human. And I think certainly one of the things that I've encountered over the years is that, and I've got countless examples of where I've seen this in practice, is that the more I put out positive energy, so the more I am proactive with something, or the more I'm, to use the word vulnerable in a scenario, or the more transparent and open I am. I'm very introverted as an individual, so I do a lot of stuff internally. I almost don't need the external world for that. But when I do share, magic happens. And, it sounds a bit cliche, but I see so much more connection and engagement because I've initiated it. So what I'm playing with on my sort of journey is this whole idea of being more open, being more, not authentic, because I am authentic, but being more transparent about my personal brand and kind of who I am, what I'm about. And it's incredible that actually people who I might have originally thought of as being either dissenters or the enemy actually come back in a much more positive way. It's almost like this kind of fosters a positive energy more generally in your world if you do this, doesn't it?
Right. I agree with you.
Yeah. And I think so the more that we can be doing this, collectively, and the more that we can be sort of sharing this opportunity, because it is an opportunity to become aware, to listen more, to become more open, to have more conversation like this, it's just going to get a better and better and better outcome. And to me, it just reduces that uncertainty of communication that can be, the starting of wars. They often say, don't they, the old analogy that wars always start because of a miscommunication. It's not because of bigger things, it's just because of a misunderstanding and a mistranslation of something. And so if we can be, as our personal brand, much more open, much more engaging, much more aligned with the audience we're communicating with, then surely all those barriers break down. It can only thing to me.
Yeah, the problem is, and I think we all go through this, is that term self-awareness. Most people walk into a room, walk into a bar, or walk into a sales meeting for their company, or walk into an environment, and they don't talk to themselves before they walk in and say, okay, I'm going into this. This is a whole group of colleagues and stuff. Chip, let's be careful what we say. Probably be careful with our alcohol. Be careful with a lot of things, because that's just the way the world works. And I think that's the troublesome of how we go through our lives of up and downs with our personal brand, because we probably don't talk to ourselves like that before we walk into a situation. You know, I get up all the time in front of a mirror and I prepare, or I prepare on my way in a car, you know, to make sure that I, you know, have aligned, you know, things up, you know, and I mean, no, appropriately. But I just think that that's, you know, this self-awareness is probably the crux. You know, the lack of, I mean, I'm still, after 35 plus years, still working on my self-awareness, only because I believe that I'm more extroverted than, you know, you are. And that's okay. Good, bad, or different. I love people. I've never not met a friend, you know, where my wife is different. She picks her friends, very particular about her friends. It takes a long time for her to have a friend or to say someone's a friend. So, you know, from that component of it, that's what really, you know, drives me, is that I think that that's what this whole personal brand big thing really evolves around. If I had to put a, you know, take a pie, take a, what's your favorite pie?
I'd say probably just plain apple pie.
All right, apple pie, whatever pie you have. The problem is, if you cut this apple pie in, let's say, and I don't know, not even thirds, but the problem is the way that we look at things is, we look at an employee, and this employee is 99% a good person. Okay, so you know, so basically 99% of that apple pie is really good, right? You know, they do well, they work well, they come to work, they pretty productive, you know, and life is good in this employee. But the problem is, we cut a little slither out, that 1%, maybe 5%, maybe it's 95.5, and this person has 5% faults. You know, there's some things that this person doesn't do very well. Okay, fair enough. But what happens in this real world is, we don't look at the 95% of that delicious apple pie that this person is made up of, and all the ingredients that person's made up of, and all the apples and things that this made that delicious 95% of that pie. We look at the 5%. And that's why people aren't getting promoted. That's why people are held back. That's why people are provide better financial success, because we all get too wrapped up in the 5% of someone. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be aware of the 5%. I'm not saying you shouldn't understand the 5%, but we need to do a better job in this country, in this world, to going after that 95% that that person is such a good person, and work on those strengths. And where we're too consumed on the one weakness, or the one comment the person made, or the two comments someone made. And I just don't look at people like that. But that is what the real world is, because most people in the corporate world today around the world only looks at the 5% of that person, and the negativity and the problems and what happened and the incident that happened, whatever it was, versus the 95%.
I think you've just defined mindful living in the whole way I was talking
well,
about.
because I researched you a little. I mean, you're the mind. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that right there leads right into why you're going to be successful, or will continue to be successful with your courses and what you do, because I believe that is mindful. That's right up your alley.
It really is. Yeah. And I think the way you described it there is just lovely. It's just awareness. It's what is. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just what it is. And it's about being aware and understanding it. That's brilliant. Love it. So how would people, I'm sure this is going to resonate with so many people, how would people find out more about you, Chip? Where should they keep? What should they be?
Let's see. You could go to www.chiphelm.com. That's my website. There's actually a thing you could download on one of my chapters on personal branding it's funny, but that's there if they want to download a chapter at no charge to themselves and listen to my whole chapter on personal branding. I mean, I've been fortunate. I have a couple, as I call them, airplane reads. If you want to really understand more about what I say and what I do and how I live, I have a couple small books up on Amazon called, Everyday Sales Wisdom, um, that drives your life and career. And another one's bigger than sales, How Humility and Relationship drive career success. They're just small reads under Chip Helm on Amazon. Only reason I say that, that's probably the best way out of the country, obviously, over in the UK and other places to receive it. I also have the audio versions that are up on Amazon. I also have ebooks. I'm very accessible. I mentor a lot of people. They call me all the time. My email address is Chip Helm, as it sounds, Chip Helm 16 at gmail.com. So that's kind of the way to reach me, by my personal email address, from that standpoint. But yeah, that's probably the best way to kind of connect with me. Obviously I'm on LinkedIn. That's how you and I connected. So yeah, I love the mentoring fact and love getting together with people. I do consulting on the side too, for different companies and aid them and help them in all their sales strategies and sales execution and stuff like that. That kind of drives me. I have a passion for that, to help drive that business more. Help them set up a sales team or help them give them direction of how to write that business plan and get that thing moving in that direction like that. So I give you what you're looking for.
That's really, really great. Thank you so much for your time today, Chip. It's just been, really interesting talking to you about, this whole concept of communication and being human.